Our hand begins folding around to the button, Phil Galfond raising it up with ace-jack of spades. Now, Bob calls in the small blind with ace-9 offsuit. Typically speaking, with ace-9, you're going to want to be re-raising and building the pot, or knocking your opponents out pre-flop or folding, or just getting out of the way. This hand doesn't have great post-flop playability, so realistically, you want to ditch this thing or maybe 3-bet if you feel like the button's opening a little bit too wide. Now over to Nick with 6-5 offsuit in the big blind. Don't hate the idea of making a call here. It does have some post-flop playability, so not your greatest hand ever, but call certainly can make some sense. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a flop, which is 4-3 deuce with 2 spades. Nick now decides to take the betting lead here and leads out $200. A bit of a weird line from Vertucci. Certainly a board where a lot of hands do connect in the big blind that the button won't have. But that said, I would really recommend players checking their entire range and letting the button decide to go ahead and bet or check and then play from there. It's going to be hard to balance later streets if you take the lead here, and you're going to have to figure out bluffs and thin value bets rather than putting that all together. I'd recommend just going ahead and going for the check and playing out of there. Anyway, Nick leads $200, bit of a weird spot now for Phil here with a nut flush draw. Can't really go wrong either way. Does have a gutter with a 5, 2 overcards, and the nut flush draw. The players are a bit deeper here, $15,000-ish deep with a $50 big blind, so 300 blinds deep. As you get deeper, you're going to want to be raising the nut flush draw a little more often because it gives you more opportunities to win all of the money. And when you get very shallow, you also like raising a bit more because you want to try and deny equity from your opponent. When you're in those middle stack territories, makes a little more sense to play it a bit conservatively. That said, you do want to have the nut flush draw in both your call range and your raise range. So I do not mind either way from Phil here, although I probably do prefer to go ahead and raise. Anyway, he decides to just call, and now Bob gets out of the way with just 2 overs and a bad gutter. We go ahead and take the turn, which is the 7 of hearts. 7 of hearts here now, I think is an interesting situation. I'm not too familiar with how to play turns after leads. I do think if Nick bets the flop, he should go ahead and mainly bet the turn here, and he should probably bet about 2/3 pop, which he does decide to do. You can have some other bluffs here you might want to bet as well, some straight draws with a 5, or if you had some kind of either spades or hearts hands. I'm going to assume there are a bunch of different hands you could kind of work in there to be balanced with it, although I do not know Nick's strategy. That is how I would approach leading. Over to Phil now. Once again, question of does he want to call or raise? Typically speaking, in situations like this, when the nuts doesn't change, you don't really want to be putting in too many raises. If Phil had a hand like a set or a straight in the flop, he would mainly be raising those. And so it doesn't make sense to raise too much here on the turn. And this is a good tip for beginning players. If you have a hand in a spot where you might want to raise, but the nuts hasn't changed, and the other player is saying they have a good hand, it's typically fine to just call and look to play later streets. Yes, in theory, the solver will raise here some of the time, and it will trap some flop hands to raise the turn, but I don't think you give up that much value by not having raises at all in situations like this. Anyway, Phil does decide to just go ahead and make the call, which is of course a good play, and we take a river. With $2,100 in the middle, the river comes the 10 of spades. Phil gets there and makes the nut flush. Now for Nick, this is not your favorite situation. If your opponent had a flush draw, they now hit their flush, but a straight's still pretty likely to be the best hand, especially when you have a spade in your hand. Nick decides to bet $1,300, about 2/3 pot here from Vertucci. Don't mind this decision. I don't also mind maybe a little bit smaller as well, but 2/3 pot still a totally reasonable line. A lot of hands to get value from here: over pairs, top pairs, 2 pairs. Although there aren't that many top pairs or 2 pairs, certainly possible hands. Maybe a hand like a set, maybe a hand like ace 7 with the ace of spades. I don't know. There's some creative hands we can think of that Phil could maybe have. Over to Phil now with the nut flush. Definitely going to want to raise this. The question is, how big do you want to go? Typically speaking, in these spots, you usually want to raise about 3.5, 4x the size of the river bet, depending on the size of the bet. In this situation, Phil has an unpaired flush, which usually means you like to go your bigger size. For example, if Phil had a hand like a 7 of spades, usually those hands prefer to go for smaller sizes because you block some of the bet calls. This is a weird lead line, so I don't feel as strongly about that. But either way, this hand definitely does want to raise, and I don't mind anything between, let's say, about $5,000 or $4,500, and just simply going all in. Anyway, this is where the hand gets kind of funny. Vertucci starts a little conversation.
What a bad river. Pre-flop raiser, you really have spades?
Nick's already said it. He knows he's supposed to fold here. It's hard to fold made hands, though.
I don't think I can fold.
No, you
It's the button
can.
game, and if you have spades, right?
Nick getting so sick of being called a nit. He's like, I gotta call here.
Poker training site's called downswing poker.
The downswing poker comment. Beautiful. Beautiful, Vertucci. You just love to hear it. But what should Vertucci do here with a straight with a spade? Again, difficult to say. I'm not too familiar with some of these lead lines, but the way you want to approach flush spots, if you're ever in a spot in poker and your opponent raises and they're saying they have a flush, typically speaking, you want to call if you have a flush or if you have a strong hand that has a spade in it that blocks a bunch of their hands that can be flushes. Vertucci does have the 6 of spades here, so this 6-5 straight would be a better hand to call with than, for example, 6-5 of hearts. So it would be a reasonable way of looking at it to just say, because I have a spade here, I'm going to call, and when I don't have a spade, I'm going to fold. That said, the raise size is a little bit big, so maybe you go ahead and just let it go either way, or you flip a coin to decide. They're all pretty reasonable choices here. But unfortunately for Vertucci, if he puts his chips into the middle of this table, in fact, it's a round table, circular in nature, he's not going to get to be a part of those chips at all. In fact, one could say he's not in the inner circle, so to speak.
You're not a part of the in-group. You're on the outs.
Nick, you might have made a bad call here, but you're in luck because we have a special package for you over on downswingpoker.com. That's right. Learn from the best. Head on over now to learn lessons including our exciting new advanced course by Alan Keating, Pre-Flop Discipline, where Alan spends 62 hours explaining how to wait for the perfect spot. Full ring pre-flop discipline, not your speed. How about a little heads up play with Nick Airball's course, How to Reel in a Sucker, an in-depth guide to heads up no limit play. But maybe you're looking for more post-flop fundamentals, and we've got you covered. Here at downswingpoker.com, we're excited to announce Andy Stack's How to Hit the Nut Flush and Put Every Dollar into the Pot course, coming out very, very soon. In fact, I think it already released a week ago. But wait, there's more. We don't just have poker here at downswingpoker.com. We also, of course, have Mickey's Baccarat Mastery. Head on down now to learn Baccarat from the legendary gambler, Mickey. And finally, we have an exclusive offer. Purchase all of these courses right now over on downswingpoker.com, and you'll get the free 5-hour course by Eric Person called Modesty, a lesson in keeping your ego in check at the poker table. An important skill set to have, there's no doubt about it. Thank you for joining me here today, and I'll see you over on downswingpoker.com immediately. Let's get some patches going soon because we gotta swap this Nick Airball one out. He's repping the wrong site.